Welcome to the Year of the Movie podcast, the podcast where we talk about movies from the year of the movie 2023.
That was very dramatic.
We're your hosts, and we started this podcast because 2023 was quite the year for movies.
Mm-hmm.
Classics like 65, 80 for Brady, Strays, etc. This is the first time we're recording in the month of June for this podcast.
That's true.
So we're halfway through
June?
the year,
Oh, yeah.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we're 6 months since it was actually the year of the movie.
I know. I have been thinking this week, actually, about what we should do for our 1 year of the movie podcast celebration. I've got a
We talk
couple
about
ideas.
2024.
Finally.
Because honestly,
It's been the other year of the movie a little bit.
I'm trying to figure out what's come out that's
Good?
good or even memorable. Because box office wise, not a good year.
Yeah,
We're basically banking on Deadpool Wolverine right now.
that's true.
Um,
Yeah, haven't been huge hitters.
there was Dune Part 2.
Dune Part 2, Despicable Me 4.
Oh.
That's a thing. Monkey Man. Hundreds of Beavers. Not a box office
Yeah.
smash, as far as I can tell, but one I've heard good things about repeatedly. Argyle, we talked about that. That one came out. Lisa Frankenstein. There's been a couple this year that have been or several movies that were supposed to come out in 2023 and then strikes happened and then
Yeah.
they got pushed to 2024. So that's continued the vibe of
And I
the
kind
year
of think the
movie.
strike, because it does kind of feel empty this year in terms of movies.
In comparison,
And I think it's
Yeah.
probably the strike.
but also we paid such close attention to 2023
It's true.
movies. I really haven't kept
That's true.
track as much. Oh,
If we're wrong and 2024 is apparently a great year for movies, let us know.
there's another Yorgos Lanthimos movie coming out with Emma
Yeah.
Stone.
Oh, Civil War.
Civil War, that's the big one. Yeah.
So if
Anyway.
you like this podcast
Yeah.
and you want to keep listening to us talk about movies from 2023, the year of the movie, go ahead and support us. We have a Patreon. And you can follow us on Instagram. You can review and rate on other podcast platforms. It helps us out.
If you have suggestions for what you want to see for our year anniversary, let us know.
Yep.
This episode we're talking about The Creator.
Yes.
Which we'll get into it,
Oh.
I think. But I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. I feel like I've mostly only heard filmmaker people talk about this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember watching the trailer. I don't remember how much of a mainstream thing it was for it to be advertised and whatever.
Yeah.
But the synopsis for this movie is, as a future war between the human race and artificial intelligence rages on, ex-Special Forces agent Joshua is recruited to hunt down and kill the Creator, the elusive architect of advanced AI. The Creator has developed a mysterious weapon that has the power to end the war and all of mankind. As Joshua and his team of elite operatives venture into enemy-occupied territory, they soon discover the world-ending weapon is actually an AI in the form of a young child. This is
Haley Joel Osment.
This is a long synopsis.
It is.
That's what comes up if you Google creator synopsis. The IMDb one is just, against the backdrop of a war between humans and robots with artificial intelligence, a former soldier finds the secret weapon, a robot in the form of a young child. So he's either a current or former soldier. It's a little iffy in the movie as well.
Yeah.
The robot baby is the big takeaway.
Yep.
What were your first impressions when you heard about this movie?
I was kind of excited because the first thing I saw for the movie was just the poster.
Mm-hmm.
And the poster, the first poster that they released was pretty cool because it was just a robot farmer
Oh, that's right.
Uh,
I forgot about that
and
one.
it was just like, oh, that looks really cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And then the trailer came out, and I was like, okay,
Mhm.
made from the guy who did Rogue One. Rogue
Mhm.
One was really good.
Mhm.
That could be cool.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions?
Um, I thought the visuals were really interesting. Um, I was a little apprehensive when I watched the trailer,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I did a similar thing of not including a breakdown of the trailer because it's exactly the same as the plot, and we're gonna go through the plot because it's as long as the synopsis is. But um, I I was, yeah, a little iffy about the trailer just because it seemed to suddenly focus so much on the military aspect of things,
Yeah.
and uh, that's not my usual vibe of a movie that I look for. It's also set to Aerosmith's "Dream On," which does and doesn't work. It's not quite. I I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the song is good, so it got me into the trailer,
Right.
but
Yeah, it helps sell the drama of it, or like the tone, I guess, but I don't know. It's never as like high octane
yeah.
as Aerosmith is. It definitely felt like and this was a comparison that I saw in the reviews for this movie of like a futuristic version of a Vietnam War movie. That's kind of the vibe that it gives off. So like that song, for whatever reason, fits in my head for
Yeah.
that kind of vibe. Yeah, the trailer sets up the basic overview, highlighting the war on AI. There was an attack on LA. That's a huge part of the plot. And they need to find the weapon, and the weapon is a baby. Uh,
Child.
it's a child, yeah, but a little baby child.
Like an 8-year-old child.
Of an 8-year-old baby. And then the full screen graphic credits highlight that this is from the director of Rogue One. Um, there's also two writers that are credited on this movie, and one of them is the director, and the other one is Chris Weitz, who also wrote Rogue One. And then I think maybe a production designer or someone else was also there's several Rogue One people that worked on this movie as well. Should we talk about the cast?
Yeah. John David Washington is Joshua Taylor. Madeline Yuna is Voiles. Oh, sorry. Madeline Yuna Voiles is
Mhm.
Alfie. Gemma Chan is Maya. Allison Janney is Colonel Howell. Ken Watanabe. Oh, wow. Watanabe as Heron. Sturgill Simpson is Drew. Mark Menchaca
Mm-hmm.
is McBride. I don't even know who that is. Robbie Tan is Shipley. Ralph Ineson is General Andrews. Veronica Ngo is Cammy.
So Joshua Taylor is the main guy that we follow through the movie. Alfie is the robot AI weapon child. Maya is Joshua's wife, among other things. Um, and then Colonel Howell, Allison Janney, she's around. I don't know. She's in charge of the squad that Joshua is a part of, kind of.
Yeah, I feel like her domain of power extends, like it overextends.
Yeah. Um, Haroon is another AI who is friends with Maya and used to be friends with Joshua.
Yeah, because he goes, brother.
Brother. Um, yeah, he's in charge of like the AI. I kept calling them rebels in my notes. I'm like, I don't know if they're really rebels. It's more like the U.S. is the rebels because no one else agrees with them in this movie. But
The U.S. isn't even rebels. The U.S. is just like, no.
kind of, yeah, they overstep their bounds.
Yeah.
Haroon is an AI man. Drew is a former soldier who is like Joshua's. The Wikipedia called him his best friend. And then he used to work with like army intelligence, and then now he has kind of defected and he lives in the Republic of New Asia and
Sure.
builds AI instead.
That makes sense.
Yeah, McBride is one of the few squad members who survives.
Okay.
Shipley is the guy that dies towards the beginning.
Okay.
General Andrews is the guy with the great voice.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah. And then Cammy is the AI partner of Drew. And
Okay.
she's there kind of briefly, but she is highlighted in the trailer. So the plot.
The plot.
The plot.
The year is 2055.
Yeah. Yeah, feel free to stop me whenever you want, I guess. Because this is a lot. So it's 2025 or 2055. There's an AI there's like a series of newsreels that talk about like it's a little bit retrofuturism where AI and computer advancements have been like incorporated earlier into human history than they have actually.
Yeah.
So it's like AI and robots are integrated into society, and then an AI, the way that the newsreels put it, is that an AI that was created by the U.S. government detonated a nuclear warhead over LA. As a result, most of the Western world pledges to eradicate AI to protect humanity. However, the Republic of New Asia continues to embrace AI.
Which is like, America's just like, oh, we messed up, so I guess that means
No one can have fun anymore.
sorry, guys.
Yeah. So the U.S. military is now in a war against AI. They kind of specify that they're not in a war against New Asia. They're in a war against artificial intelligence
But New Asia is a safe haven.
for AI.
So they basically are.
Yeah.
America has to cross the border illegally
Yeah.
to kill the AI.
They keep specifying that. Like Howell tells them like we're like when they're in a mission later on, they're like she tells them we're deep in enemy territory. Our nearest base is 400 miles away. You're going to be in the field with a lot of AI and a lot of AI sympathizers. So if you get caught, you're screwed. And then like there's a scene later on where one of the soldiers is like getting arrested by the local police because what they're doing is fully illegal by international standards.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the U.S. military is now in a war against AI. They're seeking out Nirmata, who is the architect behind New Asia's AI. And then the military has the power of Nomad, which is a space station that can attack from orbit.
And it's a cool looking ship.
Oh, it is, yeah.
But they established that it costs like $1 trillion to make.
Yeah.
And it's just like
yeah. So then a decade after the attack on LA, Joshua is a soldier who is undercover in New Asia with his wife Maya. His feelings for her are real, their relationship is real, but Maya is suspected to be the daughter of Nirmata. And that's why they sent Joshua in, like, she was going to be his source, and then he seduced her, and he's undercover and whatever. So then one night their home is attacked. Joshua's cover is blown. Maya runs away from him, and the AI supporters are hit by a nomad strike, killing Maya. She's also pregnant. She gets the dead wife treatment so hard in this movie. Another flash forward, 5 years later, Joshua is part of the LA Ground Zero cleanup crew, and he seems to be going through some sort of military medical evaluation to see if he remembers anything about Nirmata's location. He doesn't. And then General Andrews and Colonel Howell visit Joshua, saying they have a better lead on Nirmata's location and a weapon that could destroy Nomad, and they need his help. They tell him, they keep saying they know that he doesn't know anything about Nirmata, but then they're like, we found this base, or this lab. You're the only one who knows the layout of this lab. You have to help us. And that was the thing that I noticed the second time. I was like, hold on.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Anyway, Howell also reveals that they have recent footage showing Maya alive with the AI rebel group, which is the thing that convinces Joshua to go on the mission to find his wife.
Yeah, it's weird that you would trust
him.
No, like it's weird that in a world of AI,
Oh, that you
where
would
they
trust that
established
footage.
that like the AI artificial, some of them now have human looking faces, that you would
Yeah,
trust a video.
you can donate your likeness to AI.
Yeah, which like that they established later on, but it's
Right.
still just like he knows that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the squad of soldiers, including Joshua, infiltrate the base. All of them die pretty quickly. Um, Joshua finds the weapon, which is a child AI robot. The child and Josh escape from the lab before Nomad blows everything up. Joshua wakes up the next day. The AI child is there and starts to follow him places. This is all a very generalized thing of like a pretty graphic series of scenes.
Yeah.
Joshua goes against Howell's orders. Um, he decides to take the child he names Alfie, because she's got like an
Alpha
alpha.
Omega symbol.
Yeah. So he takes Alfie to his friend slash former soldier Drew. Josh plans to use Alfie to find Maya's location because he says that she knows where Maya is. If she knows where Nirmata is, then Maya would be nearby. So then along the way, he kind of gets drawn into the AI fight more. As soon as he goes against Howell's orders, then she's like, this is a traitor. We have to hunt him down. So Drew discovers Alfie is the most advanced AI ever created. She can remotely control electronics around her, and her abilities will only continue to grow with her. There's another shootout. Drew's partner AI dies, and then there's another shootout after that. And then as Drew dies, he tells Joshua that the night that his home was attacked, they had learned that Maya wasn't Nirmata's daughter. She was Nirmata. Twist.
What?
So Joshua and Alfie run into the AI rebel cell. They literally run into the AI rebel cell. Yeah. Um, it's led by Joshua's former friend Haroon. Haroon says he'll never take Joshua to see Nirmata. And then there's another major attack. Alfie is injured and needs to go to Nirmata to be fixed. And then Haroon reveals along the way that Maya designed Alfie from the scans of her and Joshua's unborn child. He also tells Joshua that the strike on LA wasn't a malicious act by AI, but a human coding error. There's a lot right there. Skip and come back.
I don't think I caught the human coding error thing.
Yeah, he just says it as like it's when they're in the boat, and Joshua's in the cell that's in the boat, and he just says like, do you know the attack wasn't even, we didn't even start this, like we just want to coexist peacefully with humans. And he's like,
What?
it was a human coding error.
What coding error?
The bomb one. The code where
they coded the bomb.
they coded the bomb to go boom, and it wasn't supposed to do that.
Okay.
Anyway, so they get to a temple where Nirmata is located. Alfie gets fixed, and then Joshua is led in after her and finds out that Maya is alive, but she's been in a coma on life support since the Nomad strike. And the AI that take care of her have kept her alive because they would never hurt Nirmata, but they hate that she can't move on. So Joshua turns off Maya's life support. Meanwhile, Howell and the military arrive at the temple. Haroon is dying because there's another shootout. He hits Howell with an explosive on her back, which Alfie briefly turns off before the other soldiers freak out at her using her abilities. So she stops and it detonates, killing Howell. So there's like a brief second right before she dies when she like, you see the realization on her face of like, oh, that's what she can do. And then she blows up.
Yep.
And then Haroon tells Joshua that Alfie must destroy Nomad. Joshua and Alfie are overrun by the military and then they get separated. There's a brief flash forward in time. The two are now at the LA military base and General Andrews is trying to kill Alfie. He brings in Joshua to do it since no one else can get close to Alfie. That's what he says. Joshua hits her with a stun gun, killing her or putting her brainwaves at 0, whatever thing they're monitoring. And then he has to be there when they incinerate her body. And then on the way to the incinerator, Andrews realizes that Joshua only pretended to kill Alfie, another twist. The two break out and make their way to a spaceport, redirecting the plane to take them to Nomad. They plan to stop a planned major strike on all AI bases that Nomad was going to carry out that day. This is a thing that's also on the news,
Yeah.
which is silly to me that they're like, "Hello, world. Here's our planned military attack. Don't evacuate your bases." So Joshua and Elfie managed to stop the missile strike, kinda. Missiles still go off,
Yeah, like
but
4 of them still
yeah,
go off.
they stop the strike, and then they need to get back to their shuttle. Alfie instead makes a detour to a room with AI bots and uploads Maya's consciousness into a robot. She had Maya's consciousness, by the way, on a little hard drive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Allison Janney's character has this device that can scan someone's consciousness, and then it can upload into an AI robot. Because she does it at one point, because a soldier dies. She scans the brain, puts it into an AI robot to talk to that guy real quick to be like, where are they heading?
Yeah.
And then she did that with Maya.
Yeah. Yeah. So Alfie makes a detour. She puts the consciousness into a robot that looks like Maya because Maya donated her likeness.
Which I'm confused as to when, but that's fine.
Yeah. So nothing happens, so she leaves the Maya bot. The military remotely tries to stop Joshua and Alfie escaping. Alfie ends up in an escape pod alone. Joshua tells her he loves her before launching the pod, saving her, and sacrificing himself as Nomad explodes. But before Nomad goes down, Joshua finds the Maya bot, and they embrace before going down in flames together. And then Alfie lands safely back on Earth to cheering crowds of humans and AI together as they watch Nomad fall. She cries and smiles, and the movie ends.
Yeah, it really does just end.
There's like the big music swell. It's kind of a cheesy shot to end on, and then it just goes black. And then that one song that I meant to look up starts playing, but it's like the one of the famous piano classical songs.
Oh, Claire de Lune?
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. So things that stuck out. This is a little different for us because this is, I think, the first movie that we haven't watched together before talking about it.
Yeah.
I saw this movie twice. The first time I saw it,
Because you love it that much.
because I love it so much. The first time that I saw it was because of that job that we used to do where we would see movie screenings in advance. My opinions don't reflect that of my past or present employers.
Say whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it.
Yeah. So the first time that I saw it, it was on like a big IMAX screen,
And I am jealous.
and it was me and one other guy in the full theater watching it. And that is kind of the way that you're supposed to watch this movie, because it looks great. Despite the tone that we're using when talking about this plot, it does look great. And we can get into why more later. And then that was months ago, and I left that being like, it looked great. And that's
Yeah.
my opinion. And then we decided to cover this movie, and I was like, I should probably watch it again because it's been a while since I've seen it, and I don't fully remember the plot, and I want to see if I feel the same about it. So I watched it last night, and it looks great.
Yeah. I watched it, I'll say, I didn't have IMAX experience, but I did watch it 7 feet away from like a 92-inch television, so it was
Basically the same thing.
still pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It fell flat for me for sure.
I wanted it to be different than it is.
The world that they're in could be so cool.
It is.
There's some stuff that I think isn't fleshed out. But yeah, like you were saying earlier, they decided to tell it from a military aspect and not just like from the robot's perspective.
Yeah. So the world building of this like is interesting just in terms of like the AI robots are everywhere, or like the way that they've incorporated technology is it feels fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
And like at a stage of technological development where like it's all very believable. I kept seeing comparisons like both positive and negative to Blade Runner and it did have that kind of feeling of just like this world is at a completely different technological point with simulants. They're both called simulants. And like seeing the way that they interacted was all very interesting. There were things like there's a reoccurring theme or conversation about going to heaven.
Yeah.
Because it's in the trailer. There's a conversation between Joshua and Alfie where she asks, like, where did he come from? Because she was built. And he's like, well, my parents made me. And she's like, where are your parents? And he said, in heaven. And she's like, where's that? And he's like telling her. And then she says, like, are you going to heaven? And he's like, no, you have to be a good person to go to heaven. And then she says, well, we're the same because you're not good and I'm not a person. And so, like,
Which feels weird because it's like they are. Isn't the whole point that they are people? They're
unclear what the
AI
goal of
people.
AI. Yeah. So, like, because we
They're
don't
trying to live their own lives.
get anything from the robot perspective really, and it's mostly through Joshua and the military's perspective, then yeah, I don't know if, like, do AI want to be considered people?
Yeah.
Like, that's not fully established.
You get a movie that has Tibetan-looking monks who are the robots.
Yeah, so like they have that whole conversation where it implies that, like, oh, robots, or like Alfie at least was raised without any religion. Fully makes sense for a robot child. And then you have monks and like other robots, and then like a lot of people die through the different military strikes, and then you see different shots of like humans and AI bots alike both going through like funeral rites
And praying.
yeah. So it's just like, well, what's going on here? Like, you set up in the background this full implication of like robot religion,
Yeah.
and you want me to care about the US military in this movie? It's like a really cool world, and then the story itself takes the least interesting approach to it, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
The editing is something that really stood out to me because I don't think it's done well. And like I don't know how much better this movie would be if you took the scenes and rearranged them.
Mm-hmm.
But currently it to me gave off the vibes of a really long recap where you're not getting every scene.
Yeah.
You're getting the scenes that matter the most from the previous episode because that's what's going to tie into the next episode.
It does just kind of, it's very abrupt at points.
Yeah.
Like when Joshua wakes up the next morning after finding Alfie, like it's a full like continuity shift of like the last time we saw him, he was in a field and like an explosion just went off, and then he wakes up and he's in a boat
Next to the water.
and then Alfie is standing there
Yeah.
just staring at him, and like stuff like that was just a little weird. When there were other times where it just like the abruptness came off as like cheesy. I felt like this movie was very melodramatic, both in the dialogue and then also in the editing choices sometimes, of like at the very end when Nomad is going down and there's like a full field, like a cornfield basically, that's in Nomad, I guess as part of a research thing. So Joshua is walking through the field as the ship is exploding, and then he sees the Maya bot standing in front of him. So they like run towards each other through a field, but you didn't see anything of like her waking up, or you just see Alfie like abandon her in the field and then go do something else. So then just suddenly she's standing there, and it's just stuff like that where like I don't need to see her waking up, but then just to suddenly have her standing there just felt weird, and also added to the dead wifeness of Maya's whole character.
The movie's hollow.
Yeah.
Like, it looks real cool on the outside, and it wants you to just be like, ooh, robot and explosions and whatnot.
I really like the visuals.
Yeah. But like, don't pay attention
yeah.
to what's underneath.
Like the robot farmer thing that you were talking about, like seeing the mix of like industrial and agriculture is really interesting.
Yeah.
Again, the movie doesn't focus on this.
No.
This is related in my head, but Becky Chambers is a sci-fi author that I really like, and she's known for The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, but then she's got this other series that's the Robot and Monk series, and it's like short novellas that take place where there's humans used to use AI and robots, and then the robots all just left one day because they were being mistreated by humans, and then it's like hundreds of years later, and a monk and a robot meet and they become friends. And it felt like that to me, of just like things are overgrown. It's like a cool mix of nature and technology, and this movie could have done that too.
Yeah.
But it focused on the US military instead.
Yeah, it sure did. And like Allison Janney, I thought did a good job
I do remember
for someone who you don't typically think of as a military employee.
I don't think of her as a military employee. I do think of her as West Wing employee.
Yes, which is different. Like
Yeah.
she was the
press secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember watching the trailer and being like, Allison Janney. Well, I'm a little bit on board again now. Yeah, like her character is interesting. Feels too strong of a word, but
not
compelling.
Her character's compelling because it's Allison Janney.
So she's good at what her line deliveries are, and then she also
You don't learn anything about her
the
character.
thing that you learn about her is that like people have lost people in the LA strike. That seems to be most people's main motivation for being in this war. And then she also says that she had 2 sons who both died because of the AI war. And she says specifically that one of them fell in love with a simulant who was working at a bar, and then he was going to buy out her contract, and then it was a setup. And she said that he was tortured before he died. Because the LA strike was a human coding error, then I wonder like how much of that is actually true.
But also, why was he tortured?
Exactly.
Why was it a setup for what?
Exactly.
Like you've established nothing in this movie that makes that.
When I say there's good world building, I mean like again the visuals and
Yeah,
everything.
It really is the visuals.
The other world building thing that I have a question mark on is how does the rest of the world feel about the US in this? Because like they fully acknowledge that their military operations are illegal.
Yeah.
And like that they don't have the support, at least internationally, from New Asia to do these things. So like how does the UN exist in 2070?
In this other world, I think we should also establish that like there does seem to be some form of more common space travel because they have
there's a moon colony.
There's moon colonies and like
spaceports.
LAX is a spaceport rather than an airport.
Right.
So I think the other countries on the Earth are probably just gonna let America do what it wants because it has the Nomad, the $1 trillion station.
Reading between the lines, then that's the implication. But like,
no other countries, they don't ever say like, oh, New Asia tried to fight back.
Yeah.
But anytime they did, the Nomad would show up and just hover above.
Airstrike them. Yeah. I remember the first time watching this movie being disappointed by the way that the military was portrayed, because it just felt really obvious of like, what do you mean military bad? Like what? Like that was one of the twists. And watching it again, I feel like that's not a super fair take, because it's not like they're portraying the military as fully good the entire time, and then Joshua is like, oh no, they were bad.
Yeah.
Like he seems to be aware of like bad things are happening, or just like every scene where the US goes through some sort of anti-AI operation, then there are women and children and civilians screaming and crying and dying, and like the movie fully acknowledges that. But it also doesn't take a strong enough stance to be like, and that's bad. Besides Nomad exploding and that being the goal. I have so many questions. There were some character motivations I didn't understand. I feel like a couple things happened just for the sake of the plot to like move forward and not because it made sense for a character to do things. For example, why does Alfie follow Joshua in the first place? Why?
She just knows that's her dad.
Why? Because
she just knows.
Because she's made in this lab.
Uh-huh.
She is raised by these scientists, basically.
Uh-huh.
And then a scientist, her last dying act is to open up a hatch so Alfie can escape.
Uh-huh.
There's so many different points when the New Asia police are like, hey, child, come with us. They specifically say, you're safe from the American now. Mm-hmm. And she just doesn't do anything.
But he shows her a picture of Mother. Because they keep calling her Mother. But yeah, he has the picture of Maya.
Yeah.
And so I think she's like, oh, I know her.
He's just like...
somehow, because I've never met her.
Yeah. He's just emotionally neutral with everything that he's done through those various points, that there's not really anything that, like, would motivate a child to stay with someone. You know how we talked about Bobo and retirement plan recently?
Yeah.
Like, Bobo, not a great guy,
No.
but he bonded with What's-Her-Face over Othello.
Sure.
There's some sort of common ground there.
Mother. That's the common ground.
I miss Bobo.
We all miss Bobo.
Deciding that she needs to find Maya in Nomad was a weird turn.
Yeah.
Of just like, all right, we did the thing, and now let's get out of here. And instead, she's like, nope, robot mom.
The reasoning is because Joshua is suffocating because the oxygen is running out, and so she needs someone else's help. But
yeah, but she just like kind of takes her time a little bit to go and find this robot, and then like finds her, starts dragging her through that field, and then she's like, Joshua needs us.
Yeah.
She can control the whole ship with her mind. Can't she find him oxygen some other way? There's also, again with world building gaps, I would love to have more of an explanation for how Drew switched from being a military guy who in a flashback sequence is like, don't go native on me, man. Like, stay with the program, when he's telling Josh that he's got to be with Maya. And then flash forward 5 years, and not only is he living in New Asia, no longer a military guy, but he's fully operating a factory that builds AI, and he has an AI partner. It's like, what happened? Why don't we know any of that? And like, in just like a throwaway line or anything, like he says to what's her name, Cammy. He just says like, thanks babe, as she's leaving the room. And then Joshua just goes, babe? And he's like, don't start, man. And then they just keep going.
Yeah. That is something that should have an explanation for sure.
At least one line of just like, 4 years ago I met her and changed my mind or whatever. And there's nothing of that.
You know, once you got a robot girlfriend.
When you build the one, you build the one.
Yeah. Okay, so this next point.
Yeah.
Oh my God. My favorite scene in this movie.
This was your favorite scene?
Oh, because it was so bad.
And it happened twice.
And it was so funny. So there's these tanks that show up and they start blowing up this AI camp.
It's right before Alfie gets injured. It's like the base camp that Haroon and those supporters live in.
And so there's this grenade that someone puts on to one of the tanks. But before they can blow up the grenade, the dude gets shot. And you're like, rats. nothing.
Yeah.
But don't worry, because we're in New Asia where there's monkeys everywhere. And so a monkey grabs the detonator and then just looks at it and presses the button.
He watches the tank to like it rolls forward and like he watches the placement of it and then he flips the switch and the tank explodes.
So either that's just a monkey or they're saying that there's AI monkeys.
Are there AI animals because they don't have like
the weird head?
the hole in the
Yeah.
head thing that all the other AIs have?
But it was my favorite scene because of how goofy and out of place it was. And it very much to me was I don't care. It's funny.
It's also the second time that happened in the movie because the first time that there's weird animal involvement is when they Joshua is trying to rescue Shipley, who is like one of the squad members who is dying but not dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
And Alfie is with him, and he has decided that they need to go to Drew. So he's like getting them in a truck. Then the local police start firing at them. They're like, the truck is inside of a barn.
Oh, I forgot about
And
that
then,
one. Oh, yeah.
So an AI farmer lived there. Joshua killed him. And then he had a dog. And the police throw a grenade into the barn. And the dog, which had been barking at them the entire time and like not friendly because its owner died, takes the grenade and throws it or like drops it back at the foot of the police, and then it blows up and all of the police robots die.
Yeah.
And then they get away. So like there were moments like that, and then other dialogue moments where it just felt like there's supposed to be a weird humor element that works in Rogue One and not in this.
Yeah, it's just because I think they replaced droids with animals, and that's not quite.
Yeah, I don't.
Like if they had established that there are AI animals,
Right.
that would have been like sick.
Great. I get it. Like they're on the side of Alfie
Yeah.
or whatever. But yeah, there's no establishing thing of like Alfie is the avatar or whatever and like can connect with living things.
Yeah.
It's just it's just electronics, and then it's just the dog helping a brother out. I don't get it.
And the monkey knowing how explosives work.
Yeah. There was some other thing that I wanted to mention, and now I don't remember. Oh, how did you feel about the title cards? Because this is broken up into chapters.
Yeah, it didn't need to be broken up into chapters, but I liked the title cards.
Again, visuals are cool,
Mm-hmm.
but it's broken up into, I think it's Nirmana at the beginning, and then it's like the mother, the child, the friend.
I mean, the first one is just the creator.
The creator, and then
Yeah.
I think it's the child, the friend, and then the mother.
It's something like that.
Yeah. So it's like, it focuses on who is helping them, or like Josh specifically, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like we learned enough about Drew for him to get his own title card.
No, it felt like a lot was probably
Yeah.
cut. I don't know.
Oh, I think that's what I wanted to mention was the melodramatic dialogue thing of like Cammy. It's another thing that's in the trailer where we haven't really heard Alfie talk that much at this point, but they're at Drew's factory. Cammy says like, "Do you want anything?" to Alfie.
For robots to be free.
And she goes, "We don't have that in the fridge. How about ice cream?" Yeah. And then Alfie is a child, so she's excited. But we haven't learned, like, what does Alfie care about? Like, again, do the robots want to be people? Like, do they want to be treated like people? And then it's just a weird kind of a joke that doesn't land for me.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It was another thing, like many of the things in this movie, that fell flat.
Yeah.
Like it was just.
Yeah. Oh. No, that's wasn't what I mentioned.
Oh, okay.
The robots that blow up, the bomb robots that run.
Yeah.
That was
The U.S. military has
yes.
robots that are just bombs, and
It's like a trash can with legs and arms.
yeah, and then they tell them to go, and then they just run and explode.
Yeah. Um, I thought of this because you said like they replaced droids with animals, basically. Um, this is like that made me think of like the droids in Star Wars, just because a joke that we keep making whenever we watch stuff is like, why would you program your droids with fear?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing in the Clone Wars a lot. Where just like whenever they like
When the battle
scream,
droids get like force pushed off of a cliff, they
and
will
they-
scream.
yeah, it's like why would you program fear into your droids? But the first time that one of the like bomb droids is gonna run and attack them, then it doesn't want to get out of the ship.
Yeah.
And then like Allison Janney yells at it, and then it goes like, "Goodbye, ma'am."
It was a
Been an-"
pleasure serving you.
Yeah, and then runs away. It's like again, for a military that like is fully against AI, why would you program them with fear?
Yeah, it is a bit silly how much the U.S. government is still using AI, and I feel like it's supposed to be some sort of message of just like, oh, the government
Yeah.
says it's against it, but then uses it when it needs it, and it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, dog, we know, we don't need the creator to tell us that.
Right. I think it's supposed to be like, aren't they hypocritical? Because Joshua also is an amputee. Like he's got
Yeah.
his arm and his leg. I think he lost them in the LA explosion, or that's the implication of it, or maybe
Oh,
it's
yeah, the explosion.
a mission or something. I don't know, but he's got a robotic arm and leg.
Yeah.
And so like that's another flashback thing of like Maya working on his arm, and then they connect that way and whatever. But like it's pretty advanced technology. Things have obviously been integrated and then into society, and then the bomb went off, and then they just kind of picked and chose what they wanted to keep.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be the implications of that. But again, the world building, visually great, substance wise, what's going on? Is there anything else we want to talk about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It just kind of happened, this movie. It's kind of how I feel about
Yeah.
it. There are good parts, but a lot of it was just,
It was not the movie I wanted it to be.
nope.
So production facts. This was released September 29th, 2023 in theaters and in IMAX, Dolby Cinemas, and other large screen formats. It was originally slated to release October 6th, but was moved up a week and competed with Paw Patrol, The Mighty Movie, and Saw X. The film was released 2 days after the WGA strike ended, and then it also had a digital release November 14th, 2023, and then it ranked number 1 in its first week on video on demand. It has a 2-hour and 13-minute runtime, and it's rated PG-13. It's got a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 76% audience score, 63 out of 100 on Metacritic, and a B+ on CinemaScore. The general consensus with critics and audiences seems to be it's thought-provoking, but then also lacking substance. And then everyone is like, it looks great. I kept seeing comparisons to Avatar, which I guess makes sense. Just like the one review was talking about like the genre of stranger in a strange land, and they were saying that like Avatar Man going into Avatar world, but that
I don't.
there's
That's
a lot of implications that go with that I don't.
yeah. Avatar isn't. Avatar is just white man goes into indigenous peoples and like.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not that. It is for like basically a lot of mixed reviews on this movie, but in general, it's praised for at the very least being an original idea and not a franchise. Like I think we're pretty pro franchise as long as it's like a new idea and not just rehashing something. But yeah, I agree. Like an original idea, also cool. Should support that. The ending paragraph in a Vanity Fair review said The Creator is well worth seeing while it's in theaters. The film's plotting may be derivative, its twists and emotional beats predictable, but there is something rare and special in its execution. It's Denis Villeneuve without the cold fussiness, the lacquered preening. Now that Edwards is free of Star Wars, though his Star Wars movie is a good one, he is a filmmaker to be fostered and encouraged so that he might make ever more arresting entertainments like The Creator. Once the franchise era has finally been laid to rest, or hell before, we'll need directors like Edwards to remind us of what new and thrilling things the big screen can show us. Go support that cause if you can. This was in an article that was saying, like, it's not too late to make The Creator a sleeper hit. Support it. Yeah, it doesn't have much substance, but, like, we need to support it just on the basis of it being an original idea.
Afraid we can't do that there, boss.
Yeah. And then another line from a review from Slash Film is, this is a very cool movie, but not necessarily a very good one.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Was it a success?
Yes, I guess.
All right.
So it had a budget of $80 million, and then at the box office it earned $104 million. $40.8 million of that was from US and Canada, and then $63.2 million from other territories. It was projected to earn between $16 and $19 million in its opening weekend, and it debuted at $14.1 million, so it underperformed in that way. And then $3 million of that 14.1 came from IMAX screenings, with men making up 71% of the audiences.
This is a man.
It kind of is. The production timeline. In November of 2019, Gareth Edwards signed on to write and direct an untitled sci-fi story for New Regency. Location scouting and test shooting happened later that year, with Edwards traveling with a camera and a 1970s anamorphic lens. And then in February of 2020, Edwards officially announced as the director of this project. May 2021, John David Washington is announced to star in the film, which is then titled True Love. That was the original title of this movie.
Love. True love.
June 2021, Gemma Chan, Danny McBride, and Benedict Wong entered into negotiations to star in this movie. McBride and Wong later dropped due to scheduling conflicts, with Sturgill Simpson replacing McBride and Ken Watanabe replacing Wong. I think also around this time, then the title of the movie was changed. Because they thought...
Danny McBride was supposed to be the military guy?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, he's, I guess, like, the other squad member that survives, and he was...
Yeah. I mean, that character's name is McBride.
McBride, yeah. So I think that's where that name came from. But they changed the title of the movie because the director said, like, he thought that people might think it was a rom-com and get confused. Which I would be confused, because I don't fully get why that was the original title. With the plot that this has, why was that the original title? And then January 17th, 2022, principal photography begins in Thailand, and then May 30th, 2022, filming was wrapped. It's won mostly nominations for things. It had Academy Award nominations for Best Sound and Best Achievement in Visual Effects. Special effects supervisor Neil Corbold was nominated for The Creator, Napoleon, and Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Good job, Neil.
Yeah, all of his various things.
But won none of them.
I don't think so, yeah. The Saturn Awards, it was nominated for Best Science Fiction Film and Best Film / Visual Special Effects. It had a BAFTA nomination for Best Visual Effects. And then there's been various wins from, like, Critics' Choice circles, or, like, critics of Los Angeles or Santa Fe, blah, blah, blah. And mostly for visual effects. So that's... people kind of feel the same about it. The tagline, or one of the taglines for this movie, is "Humanity Evolves." Not my favorite.
It's a little boring.
So co-writer and director Gareth Edwards tweeted a list of several films that were inspiration for the movie, both for the world-building elements and the emotional elements of the story. So as far as world-building goes, then there was Apocalypse Now, Baraka, Blade Runner, Akira. Emotion, then there was Rain Man, The Hit, E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Paper Moon.
Okay.
What a combo. So filming this movie, it, like we keep saying, it looks great.
Yeah.
And there are reasons why. So there were two cinematographers on the film, Greg Fraser and Oren Soffer. Fraser mostly was involved in the pre-production process and worked remotely on the film as he had prior commitments to Dune Part 2. He's also listed as a co-producer on this film. And this is the first major studio film for Soffer, who acted as the main DP. Good for him. Gareth Edwards was also sometimes the camera operator, which I appreciate how hands-on he was with everything.
Yeah, I mean this movie, like its whole thing was it looked the amazing part of it looking great because it looked great was how cheap they made it.
80 million is like more than we've ever had,
Sure.
but I would say a mid-sized budget.
Yeah.
And for making a sci-fi movie on this scale, that is insane what they did with that budget. So Gareth Edwards was sometimes a camera operator. They wanted to give the film the classic Hollywood epic quality like Ben-Hur, so they filmed it in the ultra-wide 2.76:1 aspect ratio, which is why there were so many wide releases and IMAX screenings. And then, yeah, it was a different experience watching from IMAX to my laptop. And then it was shot on the prosumer Sony FX3 camera, which is a relatively cheap camera. I don't know if
in terms of movie making, it's
Yeah.
a cheap camera. It is a $4,000 camera, which in terms of movie making is very cheap. The Aries and Panavision cameras that are like, when you think of what a film looks like, that's what they're shooting them on, and the body itself is gonna be like $30,000 or something. Like I might be exaggerating, but it is still considerably more than $4,000.
Is prosumer, I meant to look this up, is it like professional consumer or like
Yeah. So it's like if you like doing video stuff as a hobby, but you're willing to put in a little more money to like really have something nice, and that's what you're gonna go. They also use the FX6, and that's like
nicer.
that's out of the prosumer in my opinion. FX6, FX9, those are like actual cinema cameras. I would say that the FX6 and FX9 are like the little sibling of the Sony Burano, which is often used on movies. But the FX3, it is very impressive because that's basically just a little mirrorless DSLR. Like, it looks like a DSLR. It's very small, and they shot most of this movie, I think, with that.
Yeah. It's a good camera, clearly. Yeah, but most of this is like, for being a big studio movie, it's not the usual choice that they would have gone with. So part of that, like doing things on a budget, they utilized a lot of guerrilla filmmaking with very few crew members and using natural lighting as much as possible, and then limited sound recording setups. I've also heard that like they would block things for about an hour and then just shoot continuously as much as possible to try and give it like a documentary feel, which I don't think comes across in the edit, but as far as like shooting goes, that's a really interesting way of doing things, and I like that. They basically found that it would be cheaper to film with a small crew in 80 locations than like 80 locations that came close to a sci-fi look than building sets or relying fully on special effects. And then Edwards estimated that using like those traditional methods of like relying fully on visual effects or a set or something to complete this film would cost $300 million instead of their budget of $80 million.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then there were some interiors and stunt work filming that took place at Pinewood Studios, but for the most part, things were done on location.
Yeah. I also read that a lot of like background characters, sometimes they're humans, sometimes they're AI. The actors playing the background, they didn't know if they would be humans or AIs.
Oh, really?
And it was to give the AIs more of just like a genuine human look and like how they acted and behaved and walked and moved.
Yeah.
And then in post, ILM
Mm-hmm.
would just choose which ones they wanted.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that kind of stuff is what makes this movie cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool movie. It's not a good movie. So the marketing for this movie was the other thing that stuck out with me from what I remembered about hearing about it. So the official trailer was released July 17th, 2023, which was 3 days after the start of the SAG-AFTRA strike beginning. So it's not really clear how intentional that timing was, considering one of the strike's main concerns was actors being replaced with AI, and then the tone and the focus of this movie both worked with it and against it. And then the trailer also received criticism for using footage from the 2020 Beirut explosion as a visual effects plate when showing the LA nuclear attack. Edwards later said that using archival footage is typical during the visual effects editing process, but that shot was never meant to be in the official trailer and doesn't appear in the film itself. The Beirut explosion was a terrible accident.
Yeah.
200 people died. So, like, don't know if you should put that in your movie, but I've seen the side-by-side comparisons, and it's just, they overlaid a futuristic LA over the explosion, and it's rough. The publicity stunts is another thing that I remember about this movie. So in September of 2023, there were actors dressed up as the AI bots in the film appearing at an NFL game, MLB game in California, and then at a race at the Texas Motor Speedway. I remembered that being like pretty cool. I think there was also that horror movie Smile.
Smile was the first one that I remember being like, oh, that's smart.
Yeah, they had those audience plants that were just smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like having the AI bots show up, and then just from what I remember, they were just kind of looking around and like trying to get a vibe for what was going on. I think again, it looks cool, but it doesn't match with what the tone or the focus of the movie plot is, of just like, because I saw that. I can't remember if I had actually watched the trailer at that point. And it was like, oh, okay, so like AI is trying to integrate with humans and like trying to become human.
Yeah.
And then that's not quite what this story focuses on. And then there were also some reviews that I read that called the marketing for this movie lackluster, because the strikes and the promotion restrictions that were in place at that time. So there was a lot of pressure on Edwards to kind of be in charge of the marketing for stuff because the cast couldn't show up, and he was like pretty vocally supportive of them not showing up for stuff and all that good stuff. I think maybe it was when we talked about the Haunted Mansion. It was a similar thing of like, and now the director is suddenly has to do all of these promo things instead of the cast that were in this movie. Yeah, I just remembered the like publicity stunts and then seeing the word lackluster. I was like, I don't know about that. I feel like they did as much as they could considering. So I think part of the reason that it felt like there was clunky editing was producers finalized the edit of the film before it went to visual effects, which was part of the thing that they did to help with the budget. I think that financially is an interesting thing to do to save money. If you know that, like, why render stuff if you know it is going to get cut?
Yeah.
But you really lock yourself into an edit way early on and then have to just commit to that. So I feel like that was part of the reason why things felt abrupt. And then the assembly cut of this film was 5 hours long, and it had no temp soundtracks, only the sound design elements. And then Edwards found this helpful as it put more emphasis on getting the elements like the story pacing and the soundtrack design right, so that they couldn't hide behind or rely on the soundtrack. I don't fully agree as far as the emotional beats go.
Yeah.
But I do think the sound design of this movie was interesting, especially the nomad sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then the soundtrack for this film was done by Hans Zimmer. Edwards originally planned on hiring a company that specialized in AI-generated music to replicate Zimmer's style, and then he was satisfied with their results, but ultimately just went with the living human man that could do it instead. I get why you would want to do that because of what this movie is about, but just from an artistic point of view,
It's a weird move.
also with the strikes going on at the time, why would you do that? So that's all I got as far as production facts. I'm sure there's plenty more. The making of this movie is cool.
If you're interested in like how movies are made, this is one to look at.
Yeah.
Because it's like it looks better than so much more. Like so many of those other blockbusters look not great because they're just churning them out, and this looks way better for less than half of the budget.
It has like that film quality, like actual tangible film quality aspect to it that makes it look a lot more expensive than it actually is.
Yeah.
There's also a cinematographer that we've worked with, John Eisberg, who has his podcast called Shudder to Think, and I think it's the second episode of his podcast where he like specifically talks about the creator, and he talks more about the cinematography in it. If you want to learn more about the technical stuff,
Yeah.
listen to his podcast. He's good at what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we will rate this now because we always rate our films.
we do.
It's out of 4 with 5 options. 0 out of 4 is, oh no, the robots have taken over. 1 out of 4 is that was a movie. 2 out of 4 is it's a well-made movie. 3 out of 4 is enjoyable and technically good. And a 4 out of 4 is Oscar-worthy. I gave it a 3 out of 4 because it just looks great, knowing how they made it. I still enjoyed aspects of it, like when a monkey blew up a tank and when a dog blew up the cops.
Yeah.
So while I don't think it's a good film, I did enjoy it, and it is technically well made.
I gave it a 2, and I checked, and that was the same score that I initially gave it months ago when I watched it the first time. I'm gonna stick with 2. It's just, it could have been so cool, and I feel like my disappointment in the story outweighs any enjoyment of monkey blow up tank, and I gotta stick with 2. I do also think it doesn't change my rating for this, but I think maybe we should change 2 to like well made or enjoyable.
Yeah, probably.
And then 3 is it's both of those things.
Yeah, that's probably how we should do it. But the average score is 2.5.
That feels fair.
Feels fair to me.
Yeah.
We always talk about another movie that we've watched recently, just so we don't only watch 2023 films. I think we should talk about Star Trek First Contact.
Oh, I forgot we watched that too. We've watched a decent amount of movies recently.
We'll save them.
Yes.
For the next episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, we watched Star Trek First Contact because we're also just watching through all of the Star Trek stuff in general. So now we're on to Star Trek First Contact. I have seen it many, many, many times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, grew up with these.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of the best. It's real good in my opinion. I don't know if it's my favorite. I do like it a lot. But like we were watching it and I was like, "Oh no, this is like a really solid movie." Because some of them, like the next one that we have to watch, is just a really long Star Trek Next Generation episode.
Right.
But that one was like, "Oh no,
there's a plot here.
There's a movie in this. Yeah. It's not just a long episode."
Yeah.
The one before Star Trek Generations, that one wasn't a great movie.
No.
It was fun.
Yeah.
But in like that Star Trek goofy way.
Yeah. I kind of agree. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it felt like a bit of a step up from the last one that we watched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
I enjoy Star Trek.
I like Star Trek.
That's our takeaway from this.
That one is interesting because First Contact is about like they go back in time, whatever. But they're following two different plots. One plot is following Captain Picard on the Enterprise fighting the Borg, and the other plot follows Riker, Deanna Troi, and Geordi trying to make sure that warp drive is invented.
Mm-hmm.
But originally, Picard was supposed to stay on Earth with Riker fighting the Borg.
Oh.
And Patrick Stewart was just like, no,
Yeah.
my character has the past with the Borg. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the writers were like, okay, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And then they rewrote it so that it would work this way. And then they followed Picard more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like why it kind of ended up being more of an action film with Picard as the action hero, which like Patrick Stewart is not really who you would expect as an action hero, but he's pretty ripped at that point. Like he's got some big muscles at that point in time, and so like it works. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think so.
Follow us places.
Yeah.
If you leave questions or comments or whatever, we respond to them on our other podcast, the Virtual House Sessions. But I think that pretty much is going to do it. So we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.